Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Those of you that are here in person, those of you that are watching, and those that will watch in the future, I'd like to welcome you to the Rapid City Area Schools Board of Education regular meeting. I hope everyone had a wonderful Labor Day weekend, and I looked up, it's already September, and so the year is rapidly approaching its end, and it's still hot, so we have that. Shirley, may we have a roll call, please?
Troy Carr,
Here.
Jamie Clapham. Here. Christine Stephenson. Here. Donna Moore. Here. Michael Berkland.
Here.
Walt Schwan.
Here.
And Katie Urban. Here.
Okay, at this time, we'll, I don't think we have anyone for invocation, so we'll observe a 20-second moment of silence, please. Thank you. I'll now invite everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I will entertain a motion to approve the proposed agenda.
So moved.
Has been moved and seconded to approve the proposed agenda. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes, please say no. All right, sharing the success.
Thank you very much, President Carr. This evening, we have Satira Thompson here to present for National Certified School Nurse. Take it away, ma'am. I will not try.
So National Certified School Nursing, this is Justina Schmelz.
One moment, the mic's not on.
Well, now I have to start over. Okay, so the National Certified School Nurse Justina Schmelz. So National Board of Certification in School Nursing is the highest national standard of school nursing. It is a formal recognition of an advanced knowledge, competence, and a personal commitment to the excellence in the specialty practice of school nursing. Certification validates school nursing knowledge, clinical skills, shows commitment to the health, safety, and education of our students. It gains recognition for school health expertise and elevates the school nurse profession. The certification involves a great dedication as it requires a lengthy examination and qualification process. There are only 9 other nurses in South Dakota with this certification. We in Rapid City Area Schools have 2 of them now. And so Justina has worked for us for 8 years at East Middle School, Valley View. She's been a nurse for 17 years. And this summer, she completed all of the qualifications to be nationally certified. And I'm very proud of her. So congratulations, Justina. We've got a yes. Thank you.
Congratulations, thank you.
Thank you.
Any board members have any comments? All right, I find that fascinating. I didn't know school nursing had its own.
So yes, so school nursing became kind of their own specialty type of subgroup in nursing. And I don't know how many years ago the national certification came about.
No, I don't know that one. It wasn't on the test, so.
But this summer we were at a national conference and I was texting her, how did it go? How did it go? And finally she said, stop asking me. I'm waiting for my results.
Well, again, congratulations. Thank you so much for serving.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, persons wishing to address the school board, we have 3 on tonight. Each of you will have 5 minutes. Up first is Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, President Carr. Did you miss me last meeting? I must confess, I went to the rodeo. Okay. have another confession to make. I called my speech True Confessions. First of all, I'm Florence Thompson. I'm president of South Dakota Parents Involved in Education. And I'm also a retired school psychologist with over 40 years experience in the schools as a psychologist. So I have a confession to make. I was an idiot. I was an idiot for most of my life. You know, Comrade Joe Stalin called people useful idiots when they're helping the communist cause, but they don't realize it. They're being used as tools. I was one of those useful idiots. I was a raving liberal for most of my life, which surprises people that know me now. Now I'm a raving conservative. So at least I'm consistent on the raving part. I'd like to bring to your attention a couple of videos I have sent to you. They're very short videos. They're well-researched, and I challenge you, board members, to watch these videos and just examine your conscience and see if basically you're being played in this big game as well. The first one is called Woke Isn't Insane, It's Evil. And what it says is that this whole Marxist woke movement is very sane. It's actually a very clever and well used plan that works to divide people, to divide cultures, divide countries. And this is what's being done. So I challenge you to watch that. It goes through the all of the documents, all the communist leaders and everything, the philosophy, how it's come into use, how it's been used. And I challenge you to watch that. And the other one I'm sending to you is called DEI is Speaking Bitterness. Quote, speaking bitterness, unquote. DEI is the diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think it's ironic that DEI, Dei, is Latin for God. So this is our new God now. We have DEI in schools and in many places, in businesses. It's being imposed on our culture. Speaking bitterness originated in Mao's China. And they would come into the villages after Mao took control of the government. He didn't have control of the people in the countryside. They would come in and they would force people to go to meetings every night where they would speak bitterness. Everyone was to complain about something. So they would complain about the former government, or they would complain about some other thing. But they also wanted them to criticize each other and complain about their neighbors. And so they would select someone in the village to be considered rich. Maybe they had 2 walks instead of 1 walk. And so they were considered rich and the others were encouraged to complain about them. These people were often eliminated then. They were murdered. So the speaking bitterness is a very serious thing. It divides countries, it divides cultures, and that's what it's designed to do. The whole woke movement, woke Marxism, is designed to destroy the United States of America and any other country. It's a movement of world communism. It is the communist revolution. And I supported it for many years because I thought, hey, this is great stuff. I didn't realize that it was communism. I didn't realize that it was a revolution. I didn't realize I was being played. So anyway, I have already sent you these 2 videos on email, and they're quite short and they're very succinct, and I hope you will have time to watch them and give it some thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next, William, can you give me your last name?
Leon Wagner.
Leon Wagner. All right, Mr. Leon Wagner.
Good evening, board. How y'all doing? You know, I feel like modern Jonah 2024. I'm here talking to the people that are usually against our people, where y'all are part of us. And I stand very firm on my oath of office that I said in the Army to protect foreign and domestic. And the domestic part really tore me up in my heart for years, till a few years back that I realized it's not really the people that are not in consent of the Constitution, but the people that are in consent of the Constitution that are sitting in these offices or elected positions. And what we're doing tonight, we're actively in a 100 monkey theory scientific thing where there's a conscious thing when we start learning and teaching each other, and there's a certain amount, it wakes up and it goes through our DNA. Well, I've been an American National documented since 2019. I've done a lot of things throughout the government here in town and in Meade. So this is not about y'all, not about me. This is about the children. And I look at leadership qualities. Conscientious leadership and situational leadership is very major to me. When we know that Robbinsdale school walls are cracking about a ½ inch and have levels, seeing how much they're leaning over, what's that, General Beetle? We have kids in the basements with no air conditioner. I remember we were here for one meeting. You're like, oh, it's pretty warm in here. Could you imagine what those teachers and students go through? So once again, I'm bringing it up. I tried to call y'all attorney 3 or 4 times to no avail. So I'm bringing it up, Article 12, subsection 3, that any public office that gives themselves a raise or takes away from, y'all know it, nulled and voided y'all contract. And y'all taking an oath of office, y'all consented to the Constitution. Y'all are in contract to uphold the Constitution more than me and these people with a car contract or a home contract. Okay, we're learning here, we're educating, we're communicating. So I'm sorry, but y'all did. Y'all conscious was more on getting a raise, which I understand, but there's standards and protocols of doing that. Y'all voted in and wait till the next term. Y'all got sworn in July. August 6th, y'all got a raise. Y'all know y'all caught y'all hands are in the cookie jar red with the Constitution. And this is for the children here. So when y'all attorney wants to talk to me or we talk, the bond money I would like to use to General Beetle and these other schools and fix them up to where they're safe. Because you remember, last week you said, or last meeting you said, I took an oath to preserve and protect. Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, and what's in the Constitution is upholding the children and the people's rights. So no offense, this is just a conscious awakening. It's scary for me, it's lonely, but I'm hoping there'll be a lot more men and women that will educate themselves and start paying attention to what our elected officials are doing. Y'all are our leaders. We gotta lead by example. We're conscious. You're a pastor, so it hurt my heart when I saw that we didn't stir to air conditioners and other schools. And I'll come with some more laws, constitutional laws of how we could bypass and get some new schools built. So I appreciate y'all time, and hopefully y'all could give me a call. Y'all attorney has my number about 4 or 5 times.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you
very
for your
much.
time.
All right. Up next is Mrs. Gross.
Hello, board. My name is Sarah Gross. I am a parent and a teacher in the school district. I always speak on my own behalf, but to credential myself for anyone who doesn't know me, I have a doctorate in educational leadership. I was nationally board certified. It expired, and I decided to use my time differently. So that's expired, but I want to thank you. I didn't have to wrestle small children this afternoon because my building was one of the 11 that was early let out because of heat. I greatly appreciate not having to ask sweating kiddos to sit and listen when it's so warm and all they want to do is lay on the floor. So that's number 1. Number 2, I would like to take the opportunity to emphasize the need for a larger scale building project financed by the mechanism that's supposed to finance that kind of thing, a bond. I believe 11 buildings were on the list for today. Although I'm appreciative, I'm also kind of a serious teacher and one who doesn't want to lose 2 hours of instruction. I know it sounds kind of immature, just kind of standing in front of you saying it's not fair, but my kids, my 20 little bodies, missed out on 2 hours of instruction today. So while in one hand I'm appreciative, in the other hand, I am coming to you again with the request that we do, a big building project. When you met on June 18th, it was a slightly different board, but item 13, letter B, number A was an agreement with the co-op architecture for either a study or some type of thing. I was hoping that would come up more, and I think it all comes down to my third item, and that is that I'm really still sad. I understand that we must move forward with a new superintendent. I understand that the only direction is forward, but I'm sad. I'm still working to accept that Nicole was let go, as I think many of my peers are. I fully know that she serves at your discretion and that she's different than me as a teacher who has due process with my contract, a different type of contract there. I think it's widely accepted that the opener was really hard for those of us in the room. No one is mentioning it, and I guess it's still like an elephant for me, sucking some of the air and farting, I don't know. That's me. But I have faith that you made a decision based on more facts than I have, but I'm still a little heartsick starting the year. So I've come to you on this beautiful evening, and I'm appreciative of what you do every day. And I'm hoping that even through the turmoil, some background work can be done for a bond so that my 1950 South Park will be, some dirt will be broke. I always like to tell, I know that you all know it, but I don't know if everybody knows it as well as I do. But Lincoln was 1951. There's not kids in that building, but it's still one we own. South Canyon was 1952. Robbinsdale, as he mentioned, was 1953. General Beetle, of course, was rebuilt in 2000, I think 8. Meadowbrook, so it's off the list. They have full air, I believe. Meadowbrook is 1957. Pinedale is 1958. North Middle School is 1959. And that's just our set in the 50s. We do start with some 60s after that. But the average age of a high school is 68. A middle school was, I think, 48.4 and dropped to 35 with the opening of South Middle School. So the average age of a middle school in Rapid City is 35 years. But an elementary, the average age of our elementary schools in Rapid City is currently 56. And I know you know this, and I know that you're working in the background, and I'm just going to keep coming and telling you about how great school life is for anyone wanting to be a teacher. I'm teaching first grade this year, and one of my little boys lost 2 teeth. So my first week as a first grade teacher, we had 2 teeth and a lot of blood. And when he went to the nurse, she asked him, were those your permanent teeth? And he said, no, I think they were the wiggly ones. And so I'm up to 3 teeth so far and really enjoying first grade. And I would recommend to anyone who has a heart for teaching to come and join us. But at the same time, our community has to support and has to hear about how great school is, how life-changing it is, and how we need to support with a bond so that we can continue to pay our staff and recruit and retain amazing teachers and also just have a functioning system. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll turn off the mic here, if that's right.
Thank you. All right, board response to open forum. Any comments? All right, I have indication, but okay.
There.
Mrs. Stephenson.
Thanks, I didn't have my screen big enough. Mrs. Gross, thanks for your comments. Thanks for your hard work despite your sadness or grief over the start of the year. I can't express enough gratitude for you and all the teachers who continue to do what you love and work with these kids. I think Dr. Strasser is owed some gratitude for the early release and the advanced notice of it. So we'll be sure to pass that along to him. I thought that was, I was very appreciative of that as a parent, to be able to know in advance and plan and no surprises. And then finally, with a bond, with a facility plan, I can tell you from me as one board member, I have always wanted that list of 11 schools to go away, like 11 school, or that 100% of our schools can be cool when it's hot, can be adequately warm when it's cold. I think that should be a top priority, and it hasn't gone off the radar, resolving that issue and the many others. So we'll hope to have more words for you soon on that.
All right. Anybody else? All right, thank you. This time, Mr. Sassy.
Thank you very much, President Carr. That's a great segue. I would like to spend a few minutes during my report this evening to talk about everyone's favorite subject, which is air conditioning. We had a great facilities committee meeting last week, discussed the situation. Facilities committee suggested that I do a very short discussion on that tonight to continue to keep that top of mind and have everyone on the same page. So this is a really complex situation. Even if we had a money tree downstairs, obviously money is a huge part of the issue, but it is not the only issue. It is still really difficult because of the state of our buildings, because of the condition of our buildings, the variance in age, systems, et cetera. This becomes a very difficult conversation very quickly. I'm going to, first of all, just quickly review. First of all, I should back up a second and say I have to give credit to Mr. Clement for anything I say tonight that sounds remotely like I know what I'm talking about. So I'm regurgitating information that he gave me. So Mr. Clement developed this tool, which he calls the air conditioning matrix for the district. And I'm not going to deep dive into this. However, I just want to give an idea of, as you can see, have all our elementary, middle, and high schools listed. What their current status is in terms of permanent air conditioning, temporary air conditioning. Obviously, red means no, green means yes, and then the blue P's are partial. So as you can see immediately, as you scan across this top couple of lines, we have schools in very, very different looking conditions. And again, a lot of that is due to the variance in age, condition of the schools, the actual systems in place at those schools. As you work downward, the matrix looks at the infrastructure of all those buildings. So for example, can the building support additional electrical load? Are the controls adequate? Is it energy, or does the building have energy efficient windows? Considerations like that, down to system considerations. So really looking at what the best solution would be in terms of air conditioning for those particular buildings. And you'll see some of the different options there. And then ultimately down to cost. So these are estimates that Jade put together based on square footage, based on the system necessary in those particular buildings. And ultimately you can see here on this bottom line, the total estimates for those schools. So at this particular time, we were looking at about $30 million-ish to address all air conditioning issues in the district. So again, money is obviously a factor in this situation. However, it is not the only factor. Just very briefly to touch on some of the actions that are taken to try to address the situations in those buildings without adequate air coverage. So primarily what we are looking at is what the energy plant calls a nighttime air exchange, where essentially they are drawing in cooler outside air to attempt to lower the building temperatures overnight. This is typically an effective approach. However, when the overnight temps continue to stay high, especially if they're exceeding 70 degrees, the efficiency of those air exchanges diminishes, and ultimately the building heats up faster during the course of the day. We also had a long conversation as a group last week with Superintendent Strasser and Buildings and Grounds and Facilities, and sent out some best practices to the buildings. Hey, just make sure you're doing these things to try to conserve that cooler air and keep it in your building as long as possible. But in some of those buildings, it is very difficult, and there is not a lot that can be done in terms of managing those air temperatures in the buildings. Our goal at this point, as this has continued to become more of an issue and obviously started to impact the educational environment, is to attempt to address the air conditioning situation in at least 1 to 2 schools annually. Of course, that depends greatly on budget constraints, and some of the factors that I'm going to tell you about here in just a moment. But that has been our goal. This year, we did the Black Hawk Building project that is wrapping up or has wrapped up at this point, and finished the air conditioning portion of that building. We do have a project already being developed. I don't know that Jade is ready for me to uncover which building that is for, so I won't do that at this point. However, it is currently in design for this coming summer. However, when evaluating the schools to prioritize for those air conditioning installations, several factors, really critical factors, come into play. First of all, assessing whether there is existing infrastructure that can be utilized, whether the building has sufficient electrical capacity to support the addition, the condition of the current heating system to determine if it can be integrated with the new cooling system. From there, obviously considering which heating and cooling solution is best suited for that particular building. Again, you saw that line in the matrix, to look at which one of those solutions makes the most sense. And then ultimately, obviously cost is a major driver in terms of that whole decision-making process. The financial impact of the project influences how we approach the installation, which schools are selected, and of course, ensuring that we are getting the highest return on investment within those budgetary and time constraints. For schools that lack that necessary infrastructure, the challenge is greater. And I think this is where it becomes really difficult, and sometimes from, I think, an outside perspective, can seem like it's just a money issue, when in reality it is not just a money issue. So when we have schools that lack the necessary infrastructure, we really have to look at it from a much bigger picture perspective. For example, ensuring that air conditioning installations don't disrupt the learning environment. In many cases, summer break does not provide enough time to complete these projects. They're long projects, especially if there's extensive infrastructure work that needs to be done. Work required, including installing ductwork, hydronic lines, and dedicated electrical mains in some cases, often necessitates substantial interior renovations, which can significantly impact both the schedule and the budget. Ultimately, the process of designing air conditioning systems for a school can span several months. Once a project is bid, it can take several more months to procure the necessary equipment. So ultimately, the big picture idea is just that these are very difficult and complex projects, and certainly money is a component, but also a component is really trying to effectively evaluate how we move through this situation, how we schedule those projects to happen to minimally disrupt the learning environment, and ultimately how we start to move this picture forward. Again, the AC project plan for next summer currently in design phase and being prepared for bidding. Again, I'm not sure if Jade is ready for me to share that until after the bid has been released. However, we do have a plan to take another school into the green on this list as we move into next year. So obviously that is a really deep conversation. We could continue to go down the rabbit hole. However, I will stop there, President Carr, and happy to answer any questions the board may have.
All right, thank you very much.
Mhm.
Ms. Clapham.
Just to put it in perspective, so you said, approximately $30 million if we were
Right.
functionally able to do this to all of the buildings.
Right.
And remind me what our full capital outlay budget is for a year.
Approximately $30 million.
That is what I thought, but I wanted to make sure for the public, again,
Right.
put that in perspective. So any other building projects, and also I think too, am I correct? When we applied for the EPA grant, our hope was to be able to get North Middle School into the green. So we are looking at every funding option we have to do that. And so that is being attempted and looked at as well.
Yes, great point. We have applied for multiple grants that were under different energy saving programs. This is a great time for those types of grants because they're really out there at a federal level. Unfortunately, the two grants that we applied for one under EPA in conjunction with the city, and the other under a program that I'm going to forget the name of, We did not make the final cut for those two grants. So we're going to continue to be aggressive and look for that money wherever we can. It's just really difficult because we talk about this a lot with the busing situation where sometimes I think we look through too narrow of a scope and believe that we own all of our problems. And we don't. And this is another example of that. I think you could Google heat in school buildings and find articles across the nation of schools that are struggling with the exact same thing we are, which is keeping up on the infrastructure and the systems necessary to keep their schools cool. So it's a really competitive environment in terms of those grants, but obviously we're going to continue to be aggressive and look at any opportunity we have for those types of solutions.
All right, Mrs. Stephenson.
Yeah, I just had a quick question that I hadn't asked before, but does this cost estimate get us to also being comfortable in the winter? Or does that have nothing to do with AC? Does it depend on the school?
So it certainly helps to have systems that will tie into each other and integrate well. It helps in terms of efficiency, in terms of heating and cooling the building, any type of energy efficiency. So the majority of these cost estimates would move the heating situation, improve the heating situation, I should say, in terms of systems, efficiency, controls, all those types of things. So yes.
I don't see any other hands. Any questions? All right.
Very
That's
good.
not, you have more report, right?
No, I don't. Should I keep going? I can find something to talk
Don't
about.
Make me cry.
I've never been accused of getting through that too fast.
All right. Well, no, thank you. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate
Of
that.
course,
Good
yeah.
report. All right.
Thank you.
At this time, number 9, we have no conflict of interest. I will entertain a motion to approve the proposed agreements.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the proposed agreements. Any discussion? Seeing,
Hold on, let's see.
just caught me. Mrs. Stephenson.
I just like to request a roll call.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, surely may we have a roll call vote?
Roy,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Steve,
Abstain.
Donna,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Walt,
Yes.
and Katie.
Yes.
6-0.
Okay, I will, oh, are there any items in item 11 that a board member would like pulled? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion of the proposed consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Right. Items for board information. The RCAS legislative lobbyist. Oh, okay. Yes.
He did have more just.
Yeah, just at a different part. I knew he was trying to trick me.
Tricky. Thank you, President Carr. So this particular item came up during board leadership last week. We had a good conversation around it. Board leadership felt it would be an appropriate time to bring it forward and at least start a conversation. As we've talked about quite a lot over the last 2 legislative seasons especially, we have some really unique things that impact our district in terms of legislation and in terms of putting us on an island sometimes, even in terms of what is happening with other school districts and where other lobbying firms are moving in position for the overall educational environment. We discussed the idea of engaging a district-specific lobbyist, meaning an individual or a firm that would specifically lobby on behalf of Rapid City area schools. Of course, as you're aware, board, the district pays dues to multiple different organizations that lobby on behalf of all districts in the state. However, those groups are often lobbying for the greatest good of school districts. And again, because of some of the unique issues that our district faces, it often leaves RCS on an island, even within those groups. So this person or firm would lobby specifically around the position of Rapid City area schools when it came to legislative matters that impacted schools. To my knowledge, the only other district in the state that engages its own lobbyist is Sioux Falls. I've contacted the business person from Sioux Falls several times, had some really great conversations. He shared some great information in terms of what that relationship looked like from a contractual perspective, what the how the district works with that person. So they have a lobbyist that they've worked with for many years, a person that is very, very familiar with their district, familiar with education issues. They typically start conversations with that individual in the October, November timeframe, depending on what type of hot topics look like they're going to come through legislation. Obviously, they're working with that individual throughout the legislative process and typically wrapping up in that February, March timeframe. They will, at times, if there is some type of summer session or legislative research group happening, have that person attend those discussions for them and or be involved in those processes. But typically it's around that time period. The amount that they're typically paying that individual is 20 to 25,000 per year as a lump sum amount for that representation. Now, I think obviously it would take some time to work through an agreement, understand what type of a time commitment that person or firm is going to put in ultimately and determine what would be a fair contractual situation with that. I think that in terms of an expense and looking at those expenses as an investment for the district, this would, in my opinion, be a high return on investment expense. When we think about the potential benefit, when we think about some of the particular situations we've discussed over the last couple of years in terms of legislative issues, how unfavorable the state aid formula is towards our district, also the capital outlay formula and some of the limitations it places on our district. Any progress that could be made to changing those formulas, making improvements, would be paid back tenfold in terms of an investment. Also, it certainly never hurts to have another lobbyist lobbying for education interests. Even in the case of state aid, with all other variables equal for our district, every 1% increase to the target teacher salary of the state aid formula could mean an additional $250,000 to $500,000. So again, having another voice, having another individual or firm lobbying on behalf of schools, in particular Rapid City area schools, I think would be very, very helpful and in a high return on investment expense. So again, the intention for adding it as an information item was just to start a conversation and determine if this was an initiative we wanted to pursue or move on. So that was the point of adding it onto the agenda, President Carr, and happy to answer any questions or hear any discussion the board has.
All right, Ms. Clapham?
I was just gonna say, I think, thank you to administration for bringing this just idea. A couple things I think to recognize is that administration really went above and beyond. I feel like last legislative session, like traveling to Pierre multiple times. We all know how hard they all work, and asking them to do their regular job and then also go to Pierre athlete, that just really, and it's really unreasonable, to be honest. And even to ask us, not that I will not advocate for children, because I will every single day, but at the same time, we all have jobs and this job here. And so it's just, we just really don't have the bandwidth and the resources. I don't think that there really is another feasible, reasonable way in my mind. And I think that, we say we're advocates. That's what, when you're at LISH, you are advocating for kids. And so I think, a lot of times, sometimes I think people hear a dollar sign and get kind of anxious, but they said the return on the investment, the things that wouldn't be taking away any of us, any of them away from, so that someone that would be dedicated to that, I feel very strongly that it's a really good idea. And even sometimes I think just your voice and presence, even if it's not a specific bill or so, but someone knowing, oh, well, Rapid Schools are here, what do they think about? I think that would be really beneficial to us. So I feel pretty strongly that this, I would very much support this.
President Carr, may I make a comment?
Of course.
I think that's a really great point, Mrs. Clapham. And of course, I'm always happy to represent the district and the board in any way I can. However, I would say what I've learned about the legislative process in the time I've worked in this position is it's really complex and it's tricky. And I've been given the feedback often to effectuate the change, especially the change that a district like ours need, that we would have to find bill sponsors and bring bills forward for consideration. And some of that work in understanding how that system works and the landscape to influence and try to push those things forward is the more difficult aspect of that and gets really, really tricky. And I think having someone who is experienced in that process and experienced in what that looks like in terms of developing bills and finding sponsors and bringing them forward is a big part of moving from what we're doing locally, which will, of course, we're going to continue to share information, testify when necessary, all those different things. But having someone on our team that could navigate that landscape would just be incredibly helpful in terms of being effective at trying to make change. So thank you.
Mr. Berkman.
Thank you. First off, I just want to echo your thoughts about the other groups that we pay into, and I don't know what else we get from them, but I personally felt that we were not represented by many of those groups at the last session when I was listening. And so I appreciate you bringing this forward as an idea. The only kind of question that I had is maybe we could ask Sioux Falls about kind of the efficacy and how it's changed since they got a lobbyist. Because my only kind of concern with it is we are just Rapid City, and I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how if one person would effectuate that change, as you mentioned. So that's just my only question is, can we find out from Sioux Falls, like, have they seen a change in success?
Yeah. Again, I think that's a really excellent point and a fair question to ask. If there's going to be an investment, then what is the efficacy of the investment?
Mrs. Stephenson.
Thanks. So Coy, as you've learned what lobbyists do they have more access than the general citizen or like a school board member in terms of committee meetings? Like, are they in the room? Do they talk to the Legislative Research Council? Like, does that lobbyist's credentials get more access? Do you know?
You know, I don't know, Christine, in terms of if there is additional access because of a lobbyist designation. What I found interesting in my conversations with the Sioux Falls administration is, again, the idea of having someone who is experienced in navigating that landscape and understanding who to contact and how to contact them and be effective in terms of finding information and getting to the right people is a real key in having any type of efficacy in terms of making change. I also know that they do work very, very closely with the other lobbying groups in the state. So ASBSD, SASD, they're obviously trying to work as closely with them as possible. I think, again, Mr. Burkham makes such a great point that as we saw in many of the state aid conversations, because of our unique situation, it put us on an island. And again, the focus of those groups is looking at the greatest good, not necessarily what's good for Rapid or any particular district. However, they need to work effectively with those groups and not be on opposing sides, of course, to then negate any type of progress in terms of education and educational issues. So those were sort of the two things that I pulled out of that conversation that they really stressed were very important.
Mhm. And then the other, I think you're smart to identify that for the legislature to help Rapid City area schools, there will need to be legislation that's like, we need to come with ideas,
Mhm.
not just
Right.
complaints. But I feel like we have had ideas.
Right.
And we don't know the process of turning those ideas into actual legislation.
Right.
So I'd really be interested to hear if a lobbyist can help us in that process. For example, last year there was a bill that instead of doing a 1-year enrollment, it was an average.
Yeah.
And it got what I heard from East River legislators, just so everybody knows, I heard from an East River, well, that's just a Rapid City problem. Well, it's not just a Rapid City
Right.
problem. And we have worked really hard to educate our local legislators and they've been receptive to that. But you can't go to get legislation passed just by working with our Rapid City legislators.
Yeah.
We have to get everybody on board. And when they can just say, well, that's a Rapid City problem, as if your second largest school district in the state having a problem isn't important for the whole state.
Right.
But I do think that I absolutely think we need some help advocating. That said, I think that any lobbyist is only gonna be as good as the data that they can provide. And that's why I asked if they're in on the actual committee, like on the meetings where legislation is being generated and discussed, because when you hear a legislator say, well, Rapid City has a problem, I mean, they are just too admin heavy. They've got, everybody knows, which I heard in a conversation today, not from a legislator, but from another constituent. Well, the district is too admin heavy. Well, I need that data. We all need that data on the tops of our heads. Like, are we compared to everything? Like what? And that lobbyist needs to have
Yeah.
that data too, because if they don't, these persistent rumors, well, Rapid City has too many teachers because they got a grant and they brought these teachers and then they didn't let them go. That's not accurate, but it's out there floating around.
Right.
So I'm very pro, and
Yeah.
I would hope that whoever we hire gets really good information. And then I would hope the rest of us, we can't just rest.
Right.
It's the lobbyists telling us what to do,
Right.
but we do have to advocate for
Right.
the district.
Okay, Mrs. Irvin.
Just to put it on the record, we are not admin heavy. The last time I checked, we were about half the national average, just to put it out there. So I think the impact that the legislature has on school districts can't be understated, and we have to play the long game. And so thinking about how to do that now is important, and I think making that investment up front is important. In terms of efficacy, I think it's really going to be important to make sure that we have the right person. So what does that process look like in terms of hiring someone and interviewing? I mean, or what role do we play in that?
That's a really great question, and that was specifically one of the questions I asked the Sioux Falls administration was, how did you find a Scott? That happens to be the name of the gentleman. And they immediately said, yeah, that's gonna be the hardest part of the process, is finding that person, finding someone who is experienced, finding someone who knows how to navigate that landscape, knows educational issues, or has been around education, doesn't have a conflict of interest, because of course there are only so many lobbyists in the state, and those can become an issue fairly quickly. And of course, that's willing to take us on as a potential client. So I think that they made some great suggestions in terms of some places to start to ask questions around people who might be interested, people who might be qualified. Ultimately, I think we could go several different directions with that in terms of what that situation looks like, and ultimately how we bring someone on board with that. And I think that if there is agreement amongst the board that that is the direction we would like to go, would really be the next step is me digging deeper and figuring out exactly what that process looks like and how we make that work. And then answering some of the other questions that have came up tonight, of course, so. But I think that is gonna absolutely be the challenge, is finding that individual and or firm that can do those things.
Right, anybody else? I think when we asked the question, why now, why are we bringing up this issue now? One of the reasons is that there are two, in my mind, very specific issues that are coming up in the legislature that are very important to our district. And having somebody to advocate for us specifically would be a great benefit. Also, there's a statewide concern about the change with this coming up election, the change in the legislature, and there's rumors, obviously, you know, I'm a big proponent against rumors, but word out in the street that it's possible that this new session is not public school friendly. And so it's going to be very important for us to have somebody in there fighting with us and to help us with some of these issues. I also just want to make sure, as we talk about administration, that obviously this is not a permanent position. It's not permanently added to the district. It could be a one-off. We can do it every year, or we can not do it, or we can skip a year. And so it really, and as Mr. Sassy said, it's from October to November and February to March. So just kind of in that time frame. So in case somebody has a fear that we are adding on another position, it's just more of a temporary type of thing. And so for tonight, I guess we don't need a motion for anything. So I'll phrase it like this. Is there anybody opposed of us doing further further investigating, inquiring about having a lobbyist for the district? Anybody opposed to that idea? Okay, so Mr. Sassy, we'll ready for the next steps, and I guess some of the questions that you heard tonight is what we'll be looking for next time.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you very much, board.
Thank you. Next is the Marzano report. Dr. Comer.
Thank you for letting me give you an update on our Marzano research study. Last year, mid-year, we contracted with Marzano Research to do an investigation or research into our special ed programming to really give us ideas of maybe areas of strengths, areas of need, and then ideas of how we could make improvements on that. Shirley should have given you guys all a handout, just kind of summarizing the information. Marzano, all of last year to gather the information, they came in, they did some focus groups that included both general ed, special ed, and administrators, and we had different levels, elementary, middle school, high school, and so on. They sent out a staff survey, they sent out a parent survey, and then they reviewed a lot of our historical documentation, like our last 3 years of budgets, child count, where our students are placed, how many staffing we have, how many openings we have. So they looked at a lot of different information. Throughout all of that process, we narrowed it down to 3 real focus areas of things that are important to all of our constituents, all of the people who are in those groups. So the focus area 1 was identifying students for special education, developing those IEPs, and delivering the services. Strengths, you know, we do have a lot of access to some really good information to help guide what our students' needs are and how we can address those. They found that administrators and special ed staff really understand the processes and procedures of special education, so that was good. Some of the challenges, really looking at, are we allocating and putting the resources of our department in the right areas? One of the different conferences that I had been to is we typically spend, and I agreed with it, but as an overall general society, we typically spend most of our money on our lower need disabilities and less on our higher need disabilities. And so it's their suggestion is looking at how are we allocating all of those resources to make sure we're putting the needs in the right place. Staff also said we need more training. Behaviors are increasing. The students transferring in are getting more difficult. Their needs are getting more difficult to address. And so they're asking for more training. Focus area 2 talked about the number and quality of staff servicing our students. One interesting thing, it's kind of a contradiction. When we look at the numbers, we actually have, as a district, increased the number of special ed staff members within our district. However, when you look at the challenge, staff still perceive themselves to be very overworked. And I think part of that overworked is, again, because the needs are continuing to increase. And so it feels like there's more to what they have to do. And then, of course, that professional development, again, is coming up as are we addressing the needs that they feel are needs for them. And then focus area 3 is looking at that communication and collaboration. So between general ed and special ed staff and between parents and the staff. And so some of the challenges came up there is sometimes that communication can be inconsistent. And sometimes parents don't feel like they are being heard. And I think, again, part of that is just the nature of the amount of information that we have to discuss at an IEP meeting. And so sometimes it feels like we're, I'm sure, rushing through it. So then you start to think, okay, what are our next steps? So what do we do as a district? One of the things, I mentioned this earlier in a discussion that I had, as a special ed leadership team, we have got together and drafted a special ed improvement plan for our department that looks at both a 3-year goal and then annual goals. And what's really interesting is it focuses a lot on what Marzano came out and said, these are weaker areas for you. And then if you also think about our strategic plan, looking at the student pillar, the staff pillar, again, it's all kind of melding together and really supporting each other on what the areas of improvements are that we need to make. So we'll continue to monitor that, review it, and make changes as we go. I feel that we need to do a needs assessment with the staff or the resources, I'm sorry, to really look at where are our population of students that have the biggest need and are there staffing resources at that spot to give them the resources they need. Last year and then this year we're continuing. We're having the staff do what's called a weighted caseload. So again, it's going to look at student needs, both academic, communication, behavior, self-care, looking at, okay, how much need does that student have? Not every student is equal. Some have more needs. So we'll continue to look at that to help us get the resources where we need them to be. Using a survey for SPED staff to identify the professional development needs and priorities. Looking at a task force to review the Marzano information. A lot of our people came from the focus groups, came back throughout the process to give more information and discuss possible interventions and ideas. We'd like to kind of bring that committee back or get a new committee for either general ed, special ed, and administration. And then, of course, once we have all that, create, implement, monitor, get an action plan together to make our improvements for our department.
Okay. Mrs. Clappe.
Just full of questions today. And this may be, I don't know, anecdotal, but one of the things identifying students, did anything come up or just in your experience and in the district as far as knowledge of early intervention? Because since we don't have state funded preschool, is part of it that I've talked to multiple families who have never heard of early intervention, they don't know that that's a resource. If we had more students identified at 3 and 4, could that address this? Do you think that's something that's happening? Is that just a crazy idea at the side of my head.
I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. We do a really good job of advertising, you know, and having our screenings. We work with the Head Starts and we do screenings through the Head Starts. We have our Birth to Three program that we evaluate and service students with more prolonged assistance that have those higher needs. And we do a lot of screenings throughout the district, just in like the Acadians and maps and really looking at, okay, where are the student needs? We have had some experiences of students moving in to the district who are not currently on an IEP, but have significant needs. And so that process, I think, feels like it takes a really long time to identify that student when we know they have a need, but we can't just say, hey, we think you have a disability, we're gonna put you on an IEP and put you into this placement. So we have to go through that assessment process and determine eligibility. The other part is there are some outside agencies who are servicing some of those little students who are not saying, hey, you might want to go to your school to see what they can offer you as well. So we're getting students in who maybe have an outside report or something that says, hey, I went to so-and-so, they gave this diagnosis, but again, we still have to start over and start the evaluation process, even though somebody else, we can use some of that, but we still have to do our process. So I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. The needs of students are just getting a lot more high needs than they used. It's not just math. It's not just reading.
Ms. Stephenson.
Thank you. I just I had a few things to say, but I wanted a clarification. When you talked about the availability of resources, you said lower need versus higher need, like, what did you mean by that?
Yep. So when we look at most teachers we like to work with students who have easier needs to address. We're human. It's easier that way. We have less people who want to work with the higher needs population, so it's harder to fill those positions. So in our learning centers, we have, you know, much more staff in the learning center environment than we do in our district-wide programs where there's more severe needs.
Oh.
So do we need to maneuver that? Do we need to have less learning center, another like maybe resource room, and then the district rooms, but looking again at being creative in how we allocate all of the positions and group students' needs. A lot of the buildings right now will be, so if they have 2 special ed teachers, they'll kind of divide the caseload in half. But we have a couple buildings that have divided it differently. This one works more academics and has a higher caseload and works with more students. And this teacher works with less students because they have higher needs of behavior or significant academic needs. And so each building, I think we just need to be creative. And then I think as we look into the future, into future years, I think we're going to need to look at more disability specific or like an autism teach program or
Sure.
more behavioral. I think we just have to start looking at things differently. We definitely have more need in the district-wide programming right now.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense what you said. And
Yeah.
and it's really evident that in this district and everywhere, special ed departments are doing a lot with a little. Like, it takes a lot of creativity. And I know that our teachers and our paras are doing a lot with a little,
Yes.
staff wise and resource wise. So I definitely appreciate that. Do you feel like the Marzano really identified needs, but were they more heavy on identifying than on proposals for what to do?
They did give some suggestions on proposals. I didn't include that here because I think really looking at, again, getting that task force together and looking at what's going to work for Rapid City. What's going to work for our district, both general ed and special ed, because it's not just a special ed need, it's a district need. I mean, behaviors, again, are increasing significantly. It's not just special ed. So again, I think taking the information that Marzano gave us is going to hopefully narrow down the track that we can go. So again, they did give recommendations, but I think we need to bring some to the table as well of what works.
And my final thing, you know, I'm a pediatric physical therapist. I work with a lot of kids who are special ed kids. So it's hard for me to leave that all behind when I come here. This thing about families believe they're not heard by the district is so real. It's, it's kind of a gut wrenching part of my job, you know, like they just, we're just not heard, you know, and then they don't know where to go when they're not getting their needs met. It feels like people run into a lot of brick walls. And so, and I know I know I'm telling you that you haven't been doing this for forever, but I just wanted to share that's what I hear, that's what I experience, and I feel it because a lot of the kids that I work with become like my family, you know, so it's something that I hope you'll keep in mind. And then the only thing I circled is that doing a task force with general ed, special ed, and administration, I would hope that there would be families in that, in a task force.
We could definitely look at that. Yeah, I put this together just today, so.
Yeah, no, anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. I appreciate the work and thank you for all you do.
All right, Mr. Swan.
Thank you, President Carr. Dr. Comer, you referred to students transferring in. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for the report. And I'm glad this is narrowed down to like 3 focus points. So it's not real scattered, you know, and it just kind of gives us an idea of what you're up to, I guess. But I would like to say, I would like to say thank you for that, because sometimes special education can be overwhelming, you know what I mean? And it can be overwhelming to families, it can be overwhelming to us, it can be overwhelming. And then thank you for getting it down to 3 points. When you reference students transferring in, is there an area that students are transferring in from? I know in my experience, sometimes when you have a strong special education program, you know, surrounding districts would sometimes their students would come in just because the services were stronger. And I don't know, is that the case with us here in Rapid City, or is there an area they're coming from?
It's same thing, it's a mixture. We'll have kids, I think we had some from New York, we've had some California, we've had some from Montana and Wyoming. So and then some in South Dakota. So they're coming from all over. They're moving in here. Most of the students from other neighboring districts are moving here. They're not just asking, hey, could we attend you? They're moving here.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Anybody else? All right, Dr. Comer, thank you so much for the
Thank you.
report. I'd like for you to, if you could, communicate back to the staff that, you know, based on this report, the board is supportive of the department and will do whatever we can to help. And so then that goes to my next question. Is there anything at this point, because, you know, I'm a typical husband, when we hear a problem, what are we gonna do about it? Let's do something. So I didn't get the feeling that there's too much to do right now. Is that accurate until the task force and stuff, or is
Yeah,
something we
and there's a lot of stuff that we've had in place already, so I feel like we're moving in the right direction, and we're brainstorming and we're problem solving and trying to figure some of these issues out, and not just waiting until we get all the information from like the task force. So I think we're slowly integrating some of those ideas and solutions, but I think right now, I think the support of the board is huge for us as a department. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, all right. Anybody else? All right, thank you very much. Committee reports. All right. Who wants to go first? Well, you're. Mr. Berkland.
Thank you. The only committee that I've had so far is the Title VI PAC had a special meeting to discuss the OCR and kind of where we're at with that. The manager, Mr. Taken Alive, and Director Roberts presented about the same presentation we got about the AP classes and where those are standing. And then there was a little discussion about kind of the stakeholder equity committee and what that's looking like. There's been a lot of applicants for that, so we are they are going through and figuring out who's going to be on that. And then there were some discussions a little bit about deadlines. We're having some difficulties with the deadlines in the OCR report because things that need to be done to do other things are due before. And so there was a little discussion about how can we best communicate that with the committee, with the PAC, with everyone involved there. And then the only other thing is that the next PAC meeting is September 18th at North Middle School at meals at 5:30, and then actual meeting will start at 6. And all parents, community members, et cetera, are invited.
Let me just follow up on that, because I was also at the PAC meeting and there was expressed just a little bit of frustration with the OCR in the sense that the stakeholders committee is supposed to be formed to aid in decision-making, but then there's some decisions that need to be made to meet deadlines. So there was a feeling that people are being left out when they're supposed to be included, but they can't be included because that committee's not even approved yet. And decisions have to be made to make deadlines. So it's just really just kind of an awkward situation. So just for the board and the public to kind of know that we're kind of working through all that and we'll get it together. So, all right. Jamie, are you ready or do you still want me to bypass you? All right. Ms.
Thank you for
Clapham.
asking, sir. So just kind of to dovetail on that, so I'm serve on part of the OCR committee, and just a brief update. So there was training of over 900 staff members. There's a big focus on the record keeping for discipline, and that was done for over 900 staff members. And we recognize that, of course, it's another thing, but we also feel really strongly about having data to support what's happening and saying, what's really happening. If we don't have the information, we can't act upon it. We can't do anything about it. So that was done in August. And then another requirement is the MOUs to be reviewed with both the sheriff's department and the police department. Those have been reviewed by their attorneys. They should be on the next board agenda to vote on the 17th. And in the meantime, before that, we will have community listening sessions about school safety. And as Bishop Carr mentioned, we're kind of, I don't want to say the mercy of, but the OCR has to approve our list of stakeholders, so we can't push it any faster than they approve it. So the list has been submitted, and I'm pleased that a lot of people were interested and want to be active and want to have their voice heard. And so we're waiting for the approval on that, and the committee will next meet on September 11th.
All right.
Is there a size of stakeholder committee that they want, or could we just take everybody who applied?
So there was not a number defined by the OCR. However, Mr. Taken Alive and administration and leadership is, you get to a point where if you put 100 people in the room, it's not productive. So I think that they're gonna try to get a functional number, as well as we can possibly do, and include a very broad spectrum of group at the same time. And I'm not saying for anyone, I'm not saying that, yes, there were 150 people. I don't know the exact number, but that was just the main concern of having a functional group that can actually move forward. And they said, if you put, 100 people in the room, that's gonna be chaos. So, doing our best to get a well-rounded group, but also have a manageable number.
Okay. Mrs. Urban.
Okay, so we had our first community engagement committee meeting last week, and we focused on the details of our upcoming listening/info session on school safety. And that's scheduled for September 10th at 5:30 at the Central High School Auditorium, and also on the 12th over Zoom. We also outlined some topics for future listening sessions. And additionally, the committee is looking to initiate a series of volunteer projects and possible reward program called Board Bucks, which would be sponsored and funded by the board. We have more to come on that. There's a lot more discussion needed. And that covers the main points. I was also at a facilities meeting. I think Miss Christine is going to cover that, and at the OCR. And so we have another community engagement meeting on the 24th of this month.
Okay. Before we move on, did you all change the name of the committee? I mean, it's not a problem. It's technically
Oh,
engaged.
yeah, that's my fault.
Okay, all right.
Sorry. Community outreach session.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. All right, Ms. Stephenson.
Engagement's pretty good too.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be mad at that.
Okay, so we've had two facility committee meetings. We are meeting on Wednesdays at 1:00, at 1:30, twice a month. The first one, Mr. Clement gave a great overview of Rapid City facilities, the current state of Rapid City facilities. I liked it so much, I want to hear it again. I requested that we all should hear it probably every year, especially as we're getting, I mean, I've been on the board for 4 years and it was still information that was new and I didn't know that we're having trouble with people on the roof of East Middle School. That was new, or Valley View and East. Anyway, it's good stuff to know. I also suggested, and I don't know the status of this, but I think that it's in the interest of getting as much information to the public as possible. You know, there are things online to read, there are newspaper articles, but we just have to be relentless about it. And I think that presentation would also be a good one for city leaders and county leaders to hear. So we're, talked about different ways that we can get that information to everybody so that as we move into a longer term facility plan, as many people know about it or know about the needs as possible and potentially could provide some input on ways to move forward. We met again on the 20th. Got an update on South Middle School, which again, congratulations to everybody in the district who was involved in putting that together. We got an update on, we spent a lot of time discussing potentialities, kind of digesting what we heard from the first meeting with the money that is in capital outlay now, like what can we do without a bond and what should we prioritize? So that was a big part of the discussion on the 20th. We did get that AC matrix overview and requested that you all hear it and that the district hears it via this meeting. And that was it. We are gonna meet again tomorrow.
Okay. Any other committee reports? Before we do that, I need to go back in the agenda. Dr. Komar, do you know if this is made public, this report? Does public have any access to this?
Yeah, Shirley's gonna add it to the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any board member have any idea on is that adequate enough, or do we think we need to do anything else as far as?
I think it'd be great on the website in the interest of transparency to just, the public paid for it and it's public information, and I don't think there's anything really to hide. But I don't know if you have any.
Bobby, can we get this on their webpage? Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. All right, committees. Any other committee report? Okay, let me, I just want to review for everybody's clarity, the functions of the committee, of all of our committees. And it's very important that because all 7 of us can't attend every meeting, that we have subcommittees so that the committees will go to these different departments, have their meetings, and then come back and bring that information back to the board for the board's discussion and approval or thoughts. So we went just a little bit backwards because we scheduled listening sessions for security without bringing that to the board's full attention. I understand that there were some concerns, and so there wasn't an opportunity before the scheduling of the listening session for board members to have any input. So I apologize for that, but it was a kind of a critical time frame because we're approving a security MOU on next board meeting, the 17th. And so we needed to have time to have that public discussion. But I just wanted to make sure that that as we're in our committees, that we're careful that we're just there to gather information, bring that information to the full board, and then the full board will give its approval or whatever it wants to do, whatever you all want to do with what happened in the committee. Okay, any questions or, yes, ma'am?
Just to
Mrs.
follow up on that, just so you all know, the Community Outreach Committee requested a chunk of time at the board retreat to talk about more specifically about some of our ideas for the school year or for this upcoming year. But yes, we did not have a lot of leeway on the first listening session, but we will definitely gather input and work with all of you on the subsequent listening sessions for this year.
All right, thank you for that update. Also, we have a new committee, the Military Advisory Coalition. And Mrs. Urban is gonna be on that committee. She was on that committee in her work with Douglas. And so we'll continue that connection with Rapid City Area Schools. Is there anything more that you wanted to add about that?
I just know that the coalition has really been wanting a representative from RCAS to represent our district, as we have a decent amount of military connected kids in our district. So just being able to represent RCAS and hearing their concerns and making sure that we are serving military kids to the best of our ability.
Okay, all right. By policy, it is the board's president's responsibility to add or delete committees. And there was a committee that I didn't know that we had, so I'm bringing it before you all for discussion. A representative from the Teammates Regional Board wanted to see if we would continue representation on that board. We had two former board members that were on that. I don't even know if it was a committee. I don't know what it was, to be quite honest, but they don't vote, they don't say anything from my understanding. So I don't know if it needs to be a board of a full committee versus just participating in what they do. I don't know. Please help. Has anybody heard of that? The Teammates Regional Board? Okay. You said it was on the board list or it was not on the committee list? Okay, so it did, okay, so then it can't be an official committee if it wasn't on the. Okay, so.
I mean, I think Teammates is a great program. And I would be interested to kind of know the history, I suppose, of how we got involved and and why they think that our presence is helpful or what they're hoping to get from it.
Okay, I'll do some research on that. So the district already participates in the Teammates program. So that's not what the discussion is on whether we'll continue that. The question is whether Rapid City Area Schools Board of Education will have a representation on their regional board, if that's clear. Okay.
Can I comment
Yes.
on that? I feel like, well, Teammates is wonderful, and I think it's in the best interest of us as a district to have somebody represented. If they would like someone to say, yes, you know, I don't know that it has to be an official board committee. Someone reached out to me from the Journey and I'm on their educational committee. I don't see that as board work. I see it as vital, as a part of like connecting between the district and local organizations, but I imagine that all of us might have opportunities to not represent the board or the district, but to just be in the community and be asked to be places because we're a board member and we have a good perspective. So I don't know that all of those need to be official, but I do think if they want somebody to be at those meetings, we should send somebody.
Any comments?
As I tend to agree with Christine. I mean, I think, yes, it's not a negative thing at all, but I do just think we could get into the weeds on, because I serve on another board too. You know, like we could, like making all of these official board, because then I think it also gets hairy of, so at that point you are acting at the behest of the board. So then everything becomes a little bit official, like what you say then, if you say, the board sent this person, so if they say something, or, and not to say anybody's saying, but just, it could be, well, that's the gospel truth. So-and-so from the board said this in a meeting. That I think could get a little bit tricky.
Any other comments? Yes, sir. Mr. Brown.
The only thing I would say is maybe check and ask about if they have any bylaws or anything for that board, because I think that's much of why I'm on the Performing Arts Center one, honestly. Is it's in the bylaws that because we own the building, that one of us will be on there. So if it's in their bylaws, then I think it would make sense as an official thing if it says that we have to be there.
Well, Mrs. Urban has volunteered to do that. Is there anybody else interested or? Well, no, I mean,
I do not think I can take another committee at this point.
well, I thought you was. I thought
No.
you was, radio.
No, the military one, yes, but
Okay.
I'm.
What was your
constantly-
hand up with the teammates?
Yeah, I just got a message from one of our staff members. We have someone who works with teammates on our staff. Is
Yeah,
is this a board level representation if we're not voting, or is this a staff member that could attend these meetings? You know, I mean, we've got to kind of weigh our resources and our bandwidth ourselves in saying, do we need to send a board member to this? You know, I mean.
They
it's-
requested a board member only because two previous board members were on it. That's the best of mine, because when I was asked about it, I was like, I don't know nothing about. I've never heard, this is the first time I've heard of the teammates regional board.
Yeah.
So, okay, so here's what I'm comfortable with doing. It won't be an official committee, so surely you can strike it from our committee
Okay.
list.
So
But-
then it's not reimbursable. Am I correct on that?
Okay, you are correct, because it's not a committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can volunteer to attend the meeting.
Okay.
If it's so if so necessary. So
Okay.
if we deem it necessary.
All right, I'll get you the information and the contact. And then can you kind of do some PI work and kind of figure out what it is? Because like I said, from what my understanding is, you just sit at the meetings and just take information. You don't really have a input from what I heard. But if you can do that and bring that back to the board, that would be awesome. Yes, ma'am.
I would consider helping with that too, and on what level, I'm not sure. My husband is a mentor with teammates.
Okay,
So we're pretty familiar, big fan of teammates.
Sure.
I feel like it really is an excellent organization and it has its place and its purpose. So I'd be willing to help in any way I can.
okay. So we had two board members before, so now it's Mrs. Moore and Mr. Swan. So any objections to that? Anybody want to arm wrestle for to be that position? Okay, anything else on committees? All right, we're down to other. Any other? Mrs. Clapham.
I promise I'll be brief. One, is, just a shout out. We have, 5 new principals in the district, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Whitney, who is his first principalship. And, the first week, my daughter came home and said, I know this principal's good because he goes down the slide with us. And just to have a principal who is willing to just really be so on the kid's level, and just for a kid within the first 3 days of school to notice that is really impressive. And so I'm really excited for everything he's gonna do at Blackhawk leading there. So shout out to him. And then the other was honestly, may sound a little cliche, but just really a shout out to a lot of the unseen people. I went to the Stevens Pier soccer game, and the person taking the tickets, I said, thank you for everything you do. She said, no one ever says that. And you think about, there's people taking tickets and running concession stand and sweeping the gym floor when everybody else is gone and all those things. And those people disappear because they do what they do. They don't ask to be recognized. They just do it. And so I just appreciate all of those people. And there are so many of them that make this district work every single day. And it's unfortunate that sometimes they do go unseen, but he said, we see you, we appreciate you, and this district would fall apart without of all those unseen people.
Here, I agree. Ms. Stephenson.
Yeah, I just heard a piece of news that I didn't hear before, which is that the Rapid City Council provided $25,000 in food debt relief to the district. It was a matching grant opportunity and it went through the Black Hills Community Foundation. And so we have $50,000 of food debt relief already this year. And so I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that the public's aware of it. And just my sincerest gratitude to the Rapid City Council and the Black Hills Community Foundation for making that happen. That makes an enormous impact on kids' lives and the stress of family who are dealing with that debt. So very much appreciated.
Satira went and spoke to the city council on
Oh,
it.
she did?
Mm.
Oh, and she was here tonight. But not anymore. Well, thanks, Satira.
All right, Mr. Swan.
Thank you, President Carr. I would like to express my gratitude to the Common Council as well. That was a very nice gesture for, from that, body of government for our food service. So thank you again. Thank you for bringing that up, Christine. I'd also like to thank Christine for sending the invitation for the Rushmore Bowl. That's this Friday. It was a volunteer link, so I got sucked into it. And I was like, looking at it. So I'm volunteering at the Rushmore Bowl this, of course, at the Central game because we all know that's, the Cobblers are where it's at. So I just would like to, thank you for that. So just a reminder, the Rushmore Bowl is this Friday. Thank you.
And I would be there, but Wilson has the decades dance and there's no way I'm missing the decades dance. I'm quite the hula hooper.
All right, anybody else with another? Going once, going twice. We just passed an hour and 5 minutes. Anybody wanna delay it anymore? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. I'm sure we won't have much of a discussion, so all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you, everyone.